Our Bible reading this week is in 1 Kings chapter 19, and I seriously thought about telling you that you need to open the podcast because the audience is figuring out our pattern and talking about us now. They're like, we know how that's going to start. David's going to open and pitch to Jeff.
But you're a great embassy.
So actually what I'm going to do is tell you where we're going this week, and that's in 1 Kings 19, talking about Elijah post Mount Carmel.
Mm-hmm.
So there's been what can only be described as this extraordinary victory, right?
Yeah.
That completely goes south on him, and Jezebel is bent on his death. So literally the power of the government now is trying to take out this prophet.
Right.
And Elijah's got to flee for his life, and he's extraordinarily discouraged.
Sure.
And that's the place where you, when you chose the reading,
Right.
We're seeing something for us as we think about being zealous for good deeds.
No, that's right. You put yourself in Elijah's shoes. You have this great victory at Mount Carmel, and we always forgot this part too: the drought, the 3-year drought
drought's
is ended.
Yes.
And rather than Israel rising up and repudiating Baal and Ahab and Jezebel instead, it's Jezebel threatening Elijah for his life, and again, nobody doing anything about it. And so Elijah flees to Horeb, to Sinai, which is symbolically significant. That's the place where God and Israel first made their covenant that's now being broken in Baal worship. And Elijah is discouraged, it seems. And in particular, the verse that's the reason we're here is verse 10, whereas after God asks Elijah, why are you here? Why have you come back to ground zero for Israel? Why have you come to Horeb, to Sinai, as it were? Elijah says, I have been very jealous. That's the same kind of concept as zealous. I've been very fervently active in your service.
Mine actually uses zealous, the New American
Does
Standard.
it really?
It
How
does.
Well, fantastic. Yeah, it's the same word, same concept. But I've been very jealous or zealous for the Lord of hosts, and then especially into verse 10, and I am the only one who is left, and now they seek my life to take it away. And so Elijah seems to be very disappointed in the fact that this great victory at Carmel and God ending the drought has meant nothing spiritually to Israel, and if anything, he's still the outlaw, even though he has been very zealous and faithful to God's cause.
And he's discouraged.
Absolutely.
Which raises such a critical issue, I think, when we think about being zealous for good deeds, and that is the problem of being discouraged along the way when there are challenges and difficulties that come our way.
That's right. And again, it's a common thing. I mean, I think all of us who are zealous for God's work at some point will be tempted to the Elijah viewpoint, that either we're the only ones working, we're the only ones trying, or just where is God? Nothing seems to be working out. This seems to be fruitless. Nothing is changing.
And how often does that fall on the heels of a great victory?
Often.
Someone warned me one time, be careful when you're on the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Because there's only one way to go, right?
That's right.
Life isn't a smooth train ride, right?
That's
it's
right.
the ups and the downs. And so when you're on top, inevitably there comes that downside of the cycle, and we get discouraged. I do think that God does some things for him
He sure does.
to help encourage him. So maybe it's helpful for us to think about that as we will deal with our own seasons of the down cycle. So what does God give him to help him when he's worked really hard?
Yeah.
And it hadn't worked out. He's discouraged.
Yeah, I think you can summarize what God does for Elijah under two headings. He gives him a statement of perspective, give him perspective on the situation, and then he gives him a to-do list. Basically tells him to get back to work, and here in particular are some things to do. Though in God's kindness to Elijah, the things that he gives him to do are things that will encourage Elijah, because they're a way of showing that God is still at work and things are going to yet change after all.
So is the perspective part of that, does that include the statement in verse 18?
Absolutely. That's it.
About how many faithful people I still have? How many times have you let yourself get in the place where you say, nobody's doing anything,
That's
right?
That's right.
How many times have people said that about a local church?
I'm the only one trying.
Yeah, I'm the only one trying. And the reality of that is the vast majority of time, we just don't know about the 7,000 who haven't bowed the knee.
That's right. And then, I think there's a soft rebuke in there as well to remind us to, God alone knows. And until God chooses to reveal, if nothing else, in the last day when all the secrets are made open, we just need to stay at our post and do what we're supposed to be doing and not worry about what it looks like. Because Elijah, even though he was a prophet, clearly did not have the full perspective. like God does. So yeah, I think that's the statement of perspective he gives him.
And then what's the rest of this? You said he gives them some things to do. We should mention that.
Yeah, and then basically, it's given there in verses 15 and following. Actually, the statement of perspective comes at the end of verse 18, but starting in verse 15, he gives them 2 kings to anoint, and then a prophet to anoint. And I see in those things, by anointing 2 kings, one of whom is Jehu, whom God will use to destroy Ahab and Jezebel. What God's really saying to Elijah is, this isn't over yet. You've made a judgment too soon on whether this is effective or not, or whether your ministry is effective or not.
Such a good point.
And so go anoint Jehu, because Jehu's actually going to be the one who kills, is the end of the house of Ahab and Omri. And then the other thing is the anointing of the prophet. It's Elisha. Gives him a helper. You will not be the last prophet. The work does not end with you. The cause does not die with you. The cause of God is far bigger than any one person or any one apparent setback. And so again, perspective for Elijah.
It's a snapshot in time, isn't it? It's only the moment. And I think that is really what grabs us with our discouragement, this perception of this is the end rather than this is a moment. Maybe a particularly bad moment, but that's still all that it is.
That's right.
So, the same thing is true for us as well. Yeah. It's a moment for us. There's work to do. There are other people working. We just need to get busy doing our thing.
And part of, I think, what he's saying, too, with Elisha is, Elisha, the battle's not going to end with you. This battle goes on. So, again, long-term perspective. God's not in a rush. We shouldn't be either.
Well, those are some things to ponder, especially as we deal with our own discouragement. Maybe this becomes a passage that can be a blessing to us as we try to keep the fire lit and be zealous for good works.